My second event ever was my 100th podcast episode. And so I knew 100 is a big milestone and I wanted to do something to celebrate. So a lot of the times I started throwing these events were just to find reasons to celebrate, honestly. Most of my events have just been excuses to celebrate, and I call them like networking events. But like, hey everyone, welcome back to the Walk 12 podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing episodes that got coming out this year. Without further ado, let's get right into this one. So, for anyone that hasn't listened to the first episode in this series, in the last episode, I talked about throwing my very first event, how I came together. My second event ever was my 100th podcast episode, and so I knew 100 is a big milestone, and I wanted to do something to celebrate. So a lot of the times I started throwing these events were just to find reasons to celebrate. Honestly, most of my events have just been excuses to celebrate, and I call them like networking events. But like, so I'm thinking this is my 100th episode. I got to do something big. Most podcasters don't make it past episode like 7, 8, 9, right? I think like 90% of podcasters don't make it past episode 10. And then of the 90 that the 10% that do, 90% of them don't make it past episode 20 something. And so I made this episode 100. So that was big for me. This is like my purpose project. Like this is something I love doing. It's something that I have so much joy and fulfillment from doing. So I want to do something major for my 100th episode. And so I'm thinking about this long in advance. And at that time, I was planning like a virtual summit. That's a story for another day. But I ended up posting my first reel to promote the event a little over a month out. So this is well over 30 days. And I already had the idea. And since the first event went pretty well, I was like, why try to reinvent the wheel? Let me just keep the model going. So again, I found 3 local entrepreneurs. And the way I meet these people, like I go to a lot of my own network, like other people's networking events. So I meet a lot of people, a lot of cool people. And I was like, all right, boom, let me just keep the model working. Um, I got 3 people that were local entrepreneurs, and I asked them if they'd be down to get interviewed for my 100th episode. So boom. Then in terms of finding the venue, I still use the KW training room. So again, I'm coming out of pocket almost nothing for the training room, which was dope. And then on top of that, as I said, parking is still dope. Same thing as last time. And then I started promoting way earlier. So now I was texting people, I was sending out, reels. One of the things I did is I was post on my story and I would tag people on my story. And I don't know if it's this event or the next event I'm gonna tell you guys about. But I'm gonna group the next 2 events into one episode and I'll do that later. But boom. So I think this event ended up getting over 50 or so people. I think this event had close to the 55. So I had a lot of help. Shout out to M, and I forget who else was doing check-in. I think it's M or Pam that was doing check-in. Shout out to those 2. They probably were doing check-in and helping out. Um, and then from there, I had a videographer at that event. And the way I work things out with my videographer is my boy Christian. I known him since he was first getting into the videography game. He actually had reached out to me via DM and was like, "Yo, bro, like I see you're in real estate. I see you're doing big things." Because I used to post a lot, so I used to look like I was a successful realtor. But he was like, "Yo, bro, like, can I do your next listing photography? Next time you get a listing, I'll do a complimentary." And I was like, "Yeah, I got you. Like, I don't have one right now, but next one I'll let you know." This is back in 2022. Months go by, and then he ends up hitting me up again, like, "Yo, bro, like." Hey, that offer still stands. If you need a listing photographer, like let me know. I'll gladly do it. First one complimentary on me, no worries. I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm not actually focused in real estate anymore, but by any chance, do you do events? And he was like, nah, not really, but like, sure, I guess. And I was like, all right, because I got an event, I would like you to video, record. And so from there, like, I think I offered him like, uh, um, I like put him on as a sponsor or something like that. I forget what I work things out with him, but like I pretty much make sure that every event I go to, like that as mine, that Christian's there, like I give him a shout out. I give him his flowers. I tag him on social media so that everyone knows that the person that does my videography is Christian. So when y'all see my videos, like for my event recaps in person, and they look fire, just know it's Christian. Christian's behind everything. So he ended up being my videographer for that event. And that event, we had I think pizza again, and this time he had wine. And if I'm not mistaken, I had one of my boys named John Damaris. He was there, and if I'm not mistaken, let me double check. If I'm not mistaken, he was making wine, because he's a bartender. So he was like, "Yo, John, like I'll make margaritas or whatever." And so, yeah. So I had John making the sorry, I had to double check. So I had John making the margaritas. I had a little section. I gave him a table. He bought the alcohol, and so that was super fun. I had a nice little mix. He was making a nice little drinks, and the drinks were actually really good. And then I had a couple sponsors as well. This kind of all over the place. I'll organize. I'm just kind of brain dumping, but I had sponsors as well, and I ended up charging like maybe like $20 or something like that for sponsors, or maybe like $50. That way I could buy like the pizza and the alcohol. And then for this one, again, I didn't charge for this event. I just had people RSVP for free, and that was I use a tool called Mixly. It's a free like RSVP software called Mixly, and it allows people to, as I said, RSVP, and then it sends them reminders and stuff like that, and you can get the extract the email list out afterwards. So that was pretty much all the pieces in throwing that event. So altogether, we had a little over 55 people. I started promoting about 5 weeks in advance, 5 to 6 ish weeks in advance. It was a mixture of like some reels on social media and posts on my story and DMing people. And I think I also, yeah, and DMing people. So there's that. And then leading up to the event, in terms of the people that I had helping out, my friend M helped out. I believe another friend Pam helped out for like checking and stuff like that. Um, I had my friend John Damaris making margaritas. He volunteered to do that, so that's not something like I booked and like hired out. And but he was like, "Yeah, John, I could do that." And then I had my boy Christian doing the videography for the event recap video. And so that was pretty much it in terms of the people that I had helping out for the event. I said then I had three sponsors. M was a sponsor for the event. My boy Rob was a sponsor for the event, and then another lady named Naftali, who I actually met because I was supposed to help them buy a house in real estate, buy a house in here in Stanford, and so she ended up sponsoring because her now husband is a mover. He has a moving company, and so that was all the pieces that helped put this event together. So we got over 55. That event was like, that's what really like got me some motion a little bit in the event space. It was like, yeah, John throws good events. I was like, I was super excited and happy because there's so much work that goes into it, so much pressure because you never know how many people are going to show up. But like, it ended up being super well put together. Everything went smoothly for the most part, no hiccups. Ended up being a great time. And so that's all for my 100th episode. In the next episode for this series, I'm gonna be covering when I had like me moving from like doing in-person podcast interviews to me hosting like happy hours at a restaurant, which is a whole different ball game. And so this is when I also first got into like charging for tickets as well. So a whole different ball game. So I'm excited for the next episode. That's it for this one. I'll see you in the next one.